My name is Scott, and I'm currently the head of product for StatusPage. I'm based out of San Francisco in California. And if you haven't heard of StatusPage, that's okay. We were acquired by Atlassian about 10 months ago, but we got started with our company around 2013. And so we've been spending the last 4 years or so talking to lots of customers around incident management, both the tools that they use and the processes and the culture internally. And so we're here today to talk about that and ideally how we can make your lives a little bit better and a little bit happier when things aren't going so well with the systems that you build and that you deploy. So October 21st of last year, it was about noon on a Friday, and most of the East Coast loses connection to the internet to a lot of major services. So SoundCloud was down, Spotify was down, Netflix down, Twitter down, and not only that, any app that had vendors that was stationed on the East Coast, Amazon has a big East Coast data center, also is down. So many of our customers, the things that they're used to connecting to and the things that they're building upon are all down. Box, GitHub, Heroku, it was pretty bad. And the cause of this was a DDoS attack against one of the major DNS providers, Dyn. Now, DNS, obviously the phone book of the internet of sorts. When the phone book's out, people can't connect to servers. And it resulted in about 6.5 hours of on and off connectivity issues or downtime around Dyn. And to us, this meant a couple things. Number one, it was just this big awakening for IT and app developers that we had built and are heading toward building a very connected internet that's reliant not on our own systems anymore. We're actually reliant very much on third parties. And we're trending toward us building just for the core of what we need for our business and then outsourcing a lot of other things. And an outage of this scale just hadn't been seen before. It was so many apps, so many customers, so many websites that were just offline because of this outage. And so, to be clear, this was an external attack on Dyn. They didn't screw anything up. It was a botnet that took them down. But external causes are not always the case of downtime or performance issues. So let's look at another one. Does everyone remember this? This was about 6 or 8 weeks ago. This was Amazon's S3. Took down parts of Atlassian with a major outage. And this one was their fault. It was just a human error. They sort of an extra couple keystrokes in a command line, and it took a bunch of servers out of production rotation, and it just caused S3 to start to tumble. So a couple things that I want to illustrate with these examples. Number one, downtime happens to everybody. It happens to big vendors like Dyn and Amazon, and it happens to all of us here as smaller vendors as well. And the cause of downtime or performance issues can oftentimes be internal, but it's also external. So there's things that we can't control. But what really saves us in either case is having a proper incident response ready to go. And this can turn a nightmare into actually a great customer experience that they'll come out of liking you more than before you even had the incident in the first place. And here's where we're going to end up today. The communication is the newest requirement of the software industry. It's not optional. It's not a thing that you just might do if you're nice to your customers now. Customers are starting to demand that you're communicating well around the services that you're providing. And if you're deploying and building apps internally, your colleagues are going to start to do this as well. So keeping them in the dark around Office Wi-Fi, printers, network-attached storage, Jira and Confluence if you run on-prem. They need to know what's going on with these things so that they can go on about their day and do their job as best that they can. All right. So let's talk about the life of an incident. And this is from your point of view as builders and operators of IT things, and how you see it from start to finish. So step one of an incident is something goes wrong. And you may not know it yet, and the people that depend on it may start to notice it yet. But there's a small time when something starts to go wrong, and then eventually your monitoring tool is going to pick it up. And it's going to alert, and it's going to escalate. Phone calls are going to go out. Somebody needs to fix this, and our automated systems for monitoring are going to pick this up. And this could be a single service going down or a whole application going down. So then whoever's on call is going to respond to assess the situation, and they're going to bring in whoever they think is required to fix the issue, so subject matter experts, et cetera. And the whole team at that point is going to swarm to fix the problem. So we got a bunch of people involved. Yes, let's go earn that paycheck. We got to get these systems back up and running. Fantastic. And then it's over, we're back to normal, good job team, everyone did their job, we got a good resolution to the incident. And then, if you're a really good org, what you're going to do next is very important. You're going to document exactly what failed, and then you're going to get to work on remediation steps to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So we're done. You're feeling good about yourself. You responded to an incident. We fixed it. Everyone says, yes, thanks for getting Jira back up. We can get back to work now. But you're surprised to find out that your customers are telling a different story. And then your support org is very overwhelmed with support tickets, and they're not happy that the thing went down in the first place. And your account managers are starting to get phone calls from angry customers asking, why is this thing down? Or why didn't you tell me about this maintenance period? My work can't go on. I need you to be better at communicating with me. And so it's important to note that even though you may not see this on a normal basis, somebody at your company is. Somebody is getting the flack for things not working as they should. So I want everyone to pause and just take a deep breath and think about the last time that something that you relied on had downtime. You put your faith in some other company and they screwed it up. They didn't do their job well. If you feel anxious or frustrated, then you should, because that's what you should feel. So let's go back to that incident that we just talked about, and let's look at it from their point of view, just so that we can drive this point home. So first, from the customer point of view, something goes wrong, and then things are broke, and they don't really know why, and they don't have any control to fix it. And then no one's talking to them about what's broke in the first place. And so they start to panic, and this is bad. This is very bad. And so they'll frantically send emails, and your support org is overloaded with support tickets, and then there's 1,000 tickets in the queue, so your customers are not hearing back about their support tickets, so they're going to start to send emails again, and they'll start calling whoever they can get a phone number for, and they might tweet at your company, especially if you're a major airline and you've screwed things up. And then they kind of assume the worst. It's either you don't care and you're slow at fixing the problem, or you actually are incompetent enough that you can't fix it. And this makes them angry, and it just repeats all over again. So obviously this can be better. We wouldn't have started a company to help fix this if we didn't think that it should be better. So we've got a missing ingredient here in the life cycle of our incident. And let's go ahead and discover that missing ingredient. So back to our incident. Something goes wrong, your monitoring tools pick it up, and they start to alert, and now we're back to here. So you're at the point of whoever's on call responding to the incident. What should you do? You should just communicate. Just talk to your customers, even if you don't know what's wrong. Just say, hey, we've got people, they're fixing it. So next step, your whole team's working on fixing the problem. You should say that too. Hey, we've got multiple engineers on call. We're actively fixing it. Here's what we know so far. Things are back to normal now. You should communicate that too. Things should be good. They should be functioning. Because if they're not, your customers are going to say, hey, you said it's working now and it's not working for me. That's a good thing to know. And once you've figured out what went wrong and what you're going to do to fix it, you should communicate that as well. And then once your remediation work is done, you're getting the trend here. You get the point. We're adding a lot of communication on top of what is already a process by which we go about detecting and resolving incidents. So back to here, if communication is actually the newest requirement, like I say it is, of the software industry, then what tool can we use to effectively communicate around incidents? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's take a tour of StatusPage. This is a product that we've been working on for the last 4 years, and we think it's done a good job at getting companies to communicate better around incidents. Our product is specifically geared toward this, and we've been spending a lot of time working on this problem to make sure that the product works really well. All right. So this is an example customer of ours. It's one of our favorite customers. It's Twilio. Raise your hand if you've heard of Twilio before. Only like a couple people. So Twilio is a cool company. They provide an API that you can interact with your code, and then it sends phone calls to people or sends SMS messages. Like, that's a really cool thing. And they have thousands of customers that are building apps on top of their APIs. So when you come to this page, you'll notice a couple things. We're a cloud-only service. StatusPage is. We're not on-prem. But you'll notice that they have a custom domain. The page looks a lot like it's theirs. It's their own branding. It looks like it might as well be their own web property. When I took this screenshot, they had an active incident going on as well. And so you can see we surfaced that right at the top. Right when you come to their dedicated status page, you immediately know something's not correct. So the severity color here is clearly evident. This is a minor feature. We also have orange and red variations to indicate when something worse is going on. And we're showing off all the updates as they were submitted by the Twilio team. So all of the updates that you see here were some human coming in to say, hey, here's what's wrong. Here's the steps that we're taking to fix this. And in the top right, you'll notice that incidents are subscribable. So we can actually put in an email address or a phone number, and then any subsequent updates to the incident will actually get sent out to those email addresses or those phone numbers, just to make sure that they keep up to date with what's going on. So moving down, each of their infrastructure components are very clearly labeled. It's rarely the case that you have complete total downtime of all the things that you build and manage. And so we want to make sure that we can report very accurately what's up and functioning and what's not. And this way, visitors to the page can see just exactly what's going on and if it should be affecting them or not. System metrics are optional. They're sparkline graphs, and they showcase things that are important to your customers. This is things like your API response time or the uptime over the last month. You might also put things like queue processing time in here or queue size. Maybe how many support tickets are in your queue right now. So if someone hasn't heard back in an hour, they at least understand, hey, it looks like the support ticket queue is actually really high, and they don't need to call somebody about that. And as we keep going down, you see things like incident history, and this is where you're going to show off, hey, here's the operating, the past operating things that we've done when things haven't gone wrong. Here's how we respond. This is a lot for your prospective customers, so people that might be customers in the future, for them to see, hey, look, these guys are operating a huge operation. Things don't always go correctly, but when there's problems, they're responding well, and they're communicating often. And we can trust that they know what they're doing. So back up to the top here, just want to highlight one thing. There's a big subscribe to update button. And this is to add yourself as a global subscriber to the status page. And so when you click that, you're presented with a simple dialog, and you can choose which type of subscription that you want. Now, we support 3 types. We support email, and this is exactly as you'd expect. Any incident that gets created or updated, we're going to go through that whole list and reach out to them and send them an email proactively, just to say, hey, something's been reported to the status page. Here's the context around what's failing, and just so that they know as soon as possible. So generally when your customers start to see stuff fail that they rely on, they check their email inbox. Lo and behold, they have an email from their status page that says, hey, we've got something going on. And here's what those look like. So you get the title of what's going on and a most recent update that was submitted. And then as you scroll down, you get to see some context as well, just so you can see updates from the past in this incident. Next up is SMS, and this is for incidents being opened and resolved. And this is for people that are on the go. So if somebody's out at a party or at dinner, they get an SMS about something that's gone wrong, they can kind of quickly assess, does this affect me? Is it something that I need to get the laptop out to respond to? And here's what these look like. Quick incident title, you've got some of your branding intact, and then a link to get some more information. So we support over 140 countries here. We do send global SMS. And so this is a great way to make sure people are in the know even when they're traveling. And last, we have webhooks. So this is for the more technical crowd. You can put in an HTTP endpoint, and we'll actually send an HTTP request to that when something gets created or updated on the status page. And this is cool for the power users. So if you want to, for example, gracefully degrade some performance, or you want to automate a notice being posted to your user base on your website, you can do that with webhooks. So each page comes with an API, and it's got all the endpoints that you would want. And so if you want to integrate any of your StatusPage information anywhere else on the web or in your mobile apps, you can do that via the API. We ship a JavaScript widget so that you can just kind of drop it in on a web page, and with a couple lines of code, you're ready to go. And then for the dorky folks here, using a JSON payload is also available. All right, so a status page is only going to be as good insofar as it makes your life easier, and it definitely will do that. So we had a recent survey that we submitted. We sent out to our whole customer base, and we had more than 300 of our customers get back to us with really good feedback. And I want to share 3 stats that we think are very important around StatusPage and how it can help you in your operations. So first thing we asked them was, what was the reduction in support tickets? So if we centralize all this status information, how much does it actually start to deflect tickets? And on average, we found that that number is around 25%. So we definitely had some people that were just deploying StatusPage. It was maybe helping them less, and also some people that had very extensive deployments of StatusPage. So this is averaging out around 25%. I've seen customers north of 50% in terms of deflection for tickets. So next up, we asked, has StatusPage made you faster at responding to incidents? Like, once you deployed this tool, did your organization actually get better at responding to things? More than half said, yeah, they did. So this is a cool thing where you have maybe this process, but when we add tools that are frictionless, have a great experience, your organization can just start to move a little bit quicker because the tools are there to help things out. So last up, we asked, do you believe that your customers trust you more? Like, do your end users actually trust you as an organization more since you've rolled this out? And this is 2/3 of people. So we've got a tool that makes your life better. It makes your customers trust you more. Sounds like a pretty win-win to me. So remember this from earlier? So this is what we like to see, is that after rolling out your status page, all these phone calls start to go away, all these support tickets start to go away, and all these angry customers start to go away because they now have a place where they can go to get all of this information. All right, we don't have time. So we're here today to talk about incident comms. I want to spend the next part of the chat just talking about best practices around incident communication. So whether you're using us as a tool or not, this will be very applicable to you. So this is just very generic things that we recommend to everybody, whether they're using us or not. And I'm going to talk about what to do before an incident, things to do during an incident, and then after the incident, how do you follow up with your customers in the best way possible. All right, so starting before the incident, what we recommend is that you set up 2 individual roles. And it's very important that you know that these need to be set up before the incident, because once something's happening and you try to scramble to figure out who's going to take this role, it's going to get confusing and you're probably not going to have good results. So the first one is the incident commander. And it's very important that you only have one of these. This is the person that's sort of at the top making decisions about stuff. And they're responsible for 3 things. Number 1 is making sure all the communication channels are set up. So this might be a HIP chat room, a voice bridge, a video chat, a Confluence page. Wherever you're going to start to centralize communication, they're responsible for making sure all of these are set up. Next is that they delegate all of the information gathering and repair activities. So it's not their job to go look at graphite dashboards. It's not their job to communicate on the status page. Their whole job is to make sure everyone has something to do and is trying to work toward a resolution. And then finally, it's to make sure that after the incident's over, that they drive all of the post-incident remediation work. If there's software tasks or configuration tasks, or you're deploying new hardware to make sure that the incident doesn't happen again, this is the person that's responsible for making sure that everybody is delivering on that. So the second person, also very important that there's one of these, we call the incident communicator. They also have 3 tasks. First thing is posting all the customer-facing communication. So again, they're not going to be living in Graphite or Datadog trying to pull graphs. They're not going to be running command line things to try and figure out what's wrong. Their whole point is to work with the incident commander and make sure that when customer communications need to go out, that's their job. So they can get a bunch of technical information from other people on the team, but it's their job to translate that into a more generic customer comm and make sure that goes out. Second thing is to notify the commander of any new customers that are affected. So if they're starting to hear back from the customer base, from technical account managers, whoever it might be, that more customers are affected than we think so, it's their job to talk back to them and say, hey, the scope of this outage or this performance impact is actually worse than we thought. And finally, it's ensuring that the postmortem, the text-based postmortem, actually gets sent out to the customers. So it's the commander's job to make sure that all of the remediation activities are actually executed on, but you still have to talk about what we're doing. We're going to hit that in a couple minutes. All right, during the incident, a couple things, golden rules. Number one is to communicate early. And this means you may not have all of the information, but you just want to let people know that you're on it. So let's look at an example. This is Twilio's status page, and they just simply said, we're experiencing an increased error levels across multiple services, and here's what customers may be experiencing. They don't have a clue what's going wrong, but they got something up so that when their customers see it, they know, hey, people have responded, they're out of bed, they're fixing it, whatever they're doing, there's some human on the task of fixing this. Rule number two is to communicate often. So again, even if you don't have any new information, you still want to be in touch with your customers fairly often. In our world, uncertainty breeds a lot of anxiety, and we don't want that to happen. So here's an example of HipChat's. This is an internal thing that we had with HipChat. Same thing, you'll notice fixing HipChat is for our customers is our top priority. Next update in 30 minutes. And the rough translation here is we still don't know what's wrong, and we're still working on it. But at least they are communicating such that you're reminded, hey, we're still working on this. We haven't forgot about it. So let's go through a couple things. Number three for us is precision, just to making sure that what you're putting on the status page is very precise and doesn't lead to more questions. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of stuff that people will often say and things that we think you can say that would communicate better actually what you mean. So you might say, we think we fixed it, but we need more time. I wouldn't recommend you say that. Instead, you can just say very declaratively, verification of the fix is still underway. You might say the problem seems to be database related, but that doesn't instill a lot of confidence. So you can just say we're still tracking down the root cause of the issue, because that's actually what you're doing. The next one is just don't blame your vendors. Amazon is having trouble with things. We all know that that's the case, but you chose Amazon, and you should own that a little bit. So instead, we would recommend you say, we continue to work with our hosting provider. We're still trying to find Bob, who got us into this mess anyway. Don't blame your colleagues. That doesn't instill a lot of confidence. Just say we continue to investigate the problem. Fourth thing is to communicate together. So what we say a lot internally is that consistency breeds trust. And so if your status page voice or the tenor of the words that you're using is all over the place, it doesn't breed a lot of trust that you have a cohesive organization. Now, status page solves this with a specific feature that we call incident templates. And this lets you plan before your outage on exactly what you're going to say. Because you would be amazed. Like, your data center could be dark, and you're going to be sitting at the status page going, what should I say here? And for 4 or 5 minutes, you're just going to be backspace, backspace. You're going to type some more. That doesn't sound smart. You're going to type some more backspace, backspace. And meanwhile, like your data center is like out. And so I don't know why it happens. We just observe that it does happen. And so when you're in a much calmer state, decide on exactly what you want to say in a couple different scenarios and put them into incident templates so you can just quickly come in, point and click, and get some communication out as quickly as you can. All right, so finally, after the incident, I'm going to go a little bit quickly through this. Rule number one is to say sorry. Postmortems are very human communications, and we want to make sure that we preserve that. So here's where we think Twilio missed the mark. This was a couple years ago, but they opened up this whole paragraph. Twilio experienced an incident with its billing system on July 18th, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a corporate press release. And as a customer, this is not fun to read. This doesn't breed a lot of trust with me that they actually are sorry that they had some downtime and that somebody internally is taking it upon themselves to fix it. So just come off right at the bat and say sorry. Like I just said, don't name names, so here's our own status page where I think we missed the mark. This was recently. Services are beginning to recover as a result of Amazon Web Services stabilizing. We chose AWS. We shouldn't be blaming them for what's going on. You can say just continue to work with the hosting provider. Next is to be personal. Like I said, these are human connections. So you'll notice the author here is just Twilio. There's a bunch of we language. We definitely prefer if somebody puts their name on it and says, I'm going to ensure that we fix this. Not we as soulless corporation are going to try to fix this. I personally will see to it that we fix this and this doesn't happen again. Next is to be detailed. So this is where we all get to get nerdy. This is the fun part. You reconstruct this whole timeline of the incident and what happened. We're talking about Redis master-slave failover and networking partitions. This is where you get to put a lot of details in. This is the fun part, because these details inspire a lot of confidence. So make sure you put a lot of details in. And last is just to make sure that you close the loop. So if an incident happened, even if you responded and communicated well, you've got to make sure that you communicate to your customers that we've done work to make sure that this is not going to happen again. If you're really good at having a lot of incidents and responding well to them, that's not the best that you could be doing. You want to make sure that you're closing the loop with all of them and making sure that they understand that you're taking steps to ensure that this doesn't happen again. All right, on to the fun stuff. So Atlassian as a company, I think, is very well positioned to help you manage incidents with the suite of the tools that we have. So StatusPage takes care of the communication aspect, but all the other tools that we have do a really good job of making sure that you're managing things very well end to end. So let's take a look. So Confluence is an incredible tool. I'm not sure how many of you use it internally, but we use it for pretty much everything at Atlassian, and it's awesome. So we recommend that you store things like runbooks, to-do lists, checkpoints for execution around responding to incidents, because that lets you spring immediately into action instead of trying to remember, oh, I think John did that last time, let me see if he's online. None of that. You don't want any of this personalized response. You should get everything into Confluence so that when you do have an incident, you can quickly pull up the page and just start executing on it. So you can pack a lot of information into a Confluence page, for sure. And like I said, detail every step so that there's no second guessing, and clear ownership. It's hard to understate how important this is, especially in the context of an incident. Second thing is to communicate with StatusPage. So we just looked at a lot of this. Obviously, your status page, we want to be your single source of truth for all of the communications that you're sending out, and the most up-to-date view of your infrastructure lives in StatusPage. Make sure that you communicate early. Make sure that you communicate often. Next is swarming with HipChat. How many of you have HipChat or another chat provider deployed internally? Very cool. All right, still not everybody though. So HipChat's great because we like to centralize a lot of our communications there. Not only does it let you talk very easily to each other, but it also provides a built-in timeline because you can go back after the incident and reconstruct, okay, this is when we started to respond to it. Here's when we send out customer comms. Here's when we executed a command. This brought the data center back online. You've got this built-in timeline function that you can go reconstruct after the incident. And then also, HipChat integrates with StatusPage. So anything that you're going to do in terms of creating or updating an incident is going to end up in one or more HipChat rooms. It's a good way for you to keep the rest of the company involved with what's going on. And again, for the timeline, it's very easy to reconstruct. Jira and HipChat do play very, very nicely together. And so a lot of our power users are using specific Jira workflows around incidents to get the right people in the room and making sure that all the people get into the communications channels as easily as possible. So Service Desk is where you're going to handle a lot of the inbound tickets for your incident. So whether you're deploying stuff internally or your customers come to Service Desk to ask you questions or tell you your site's down. And so we wrote this beautiful integration that will surface your status page information right on your Service Desk. This is we talked about deflecting tickets. This is a great way for you to deflect a lot of tickets when people come to report an outage or say, hey, this thing isn't working like it should be. Your status page information can end up right at the top. So instead of creating a new ticket that you're going to have to respond to and say, hey, super sorry we had some downtime, they just end up on your status page, and they go, this is fantastic. And then they put their email address in, and then they're going to start getting all of the updates to whatever incident was going on. So once the incident's over, you should put all of your follow-up work into Jira software. And so, again, this is to make sure that we don't have the same incident twice. But Jira software is going to be that statement of record of, we had an incident, here's all the remediation activities. That incident commander has one place to look to make sure that all the stuff that came out of the incident has actually been done and delivered. So here they all are. Just a final note from me. We talk to thousands of companies every year, and there actually is a common thread, and that is that tools alone don't fix your processes. You have to have a culture that goes with it. You can't just slap in a status page into any organization and expect it to work really well if you normally have a bunch of very rigid walls and if you don't have a ton of good communication to start out with. So tools will augment what you're doing really well already, but they're not going to fix the cultural issues. So number one, we'd say accept that failure happens. It's a thing. Amazon can't avoid it. Dyn cannot avoid it. Atlassian cannot avoid it. StatusPage, we have to run our own systems. We can't avoid it. It's going to happen, and you've just got to accept that it's going to happen. It's be external forces or internal forces. And number two, just commit to the culture of learning and improvement instead of blaming and opaqueness and walls. We try to deploy software a lot and just make sure that we have checks to roll it back. We don't do a big review process. We do enough reviews so that we can move quickly. But when you get your culture geared up around moving quickly, transparency, and learning, you're going to find that you're going to move a lot faster. So that's all I have, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Scott.